Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're looking at the question, what is nihilism? Now, unlike many philosophical positions, which would not be caught dead in a best-selling novel, nihilism is as much an invention of literature, see Turgenev's Father and Sons, as it is philosophy. This literary origin means that nihilism is not as clearly defined as some philosophies, and depending on the context may have one of two closely associated meanings. Whether the claim is that morals or morality is unjustifiable, or the claim is simply that life is meaningless. Now, simply put, nihilism is the belief that claims about what is good or claims about the meaning of life cannot be justified, and that these beliefs should lead us to take negative actions. It's not merely the kind of non-cognitivist claim that statements about good and bad are nonsense. Rather, it's the claim that because they're nonsense, we can do whatever we want. In the case of morals, these actions might constitute doing things that were traditionally thought to be immoral, and kind of a strong anarchist streak, almost. In the case of the meaning of life, it might lead one to contemplate suicide or devolve into kind of a callousness or carelessness about life, at least if you believe the anti-nihilists. Now, the fear of nihilism is often seen as a reaction to atheism and the rise of atheism. As more individuals in developed countries gave up on religion as a source of both morality and meaning, there was a worry that these individuals would descend into immorality or hopelessness, and that these societies would end in immorality and hopelessness. Nietzsche expressed this concern that atheism was ushering in an era of nihilism, and we shouldn't be talking about nihilism without talking about Nietzsche, who arguably is the philosopher that talked about nihilism the most. However, Nietzsche, an atheist who did oppose nihilism despite talking about it a lot, argued that this was an opportunity to create a new, better morality and meaning to life, rather than saying that, oh, well, I guess we should usher in nihilism and not believe in good and evil anymore. Doubting the existent morality did not necessarily lead to chaos, but rather to the chance to make our own morality. This belief that this idea that, oh, the rules don't apply anymore isn't an incentive to break every single one of them, but rather an incentive to say, let's look at which ones we want to keep and which ones we don't. In other words, tearing down the old house didn't necessarily lead to homelessness, but could provide the opportunity to build a new and better house. So, there are a range of positions to be had on the spectrum of nihilism about morality that we're going to take a look at here to kind of try to codify a couple of these ideas. They range from those that are more willing to question elements of morality and traditional kind of institutions of morality, and those that are less willing to question the ideas of morality and so on. At the far end, we have the anti-nihilists. The anti-nihilists are theists that claim that morality cannot be justified without God, and therefore no atheist can justify moral claims. Therefore, atheists are immoral, and we have to have God. Basically, if God is dead, there are no morals, therefore God is alive. Oversimplification of the argument, but that's basically where they're standing. The next stop on this kind of spectrum is the atheistic moral cognitivists. Basically, these are folks that believe that there is a morality, we can say things about morals, we just aren't going to say them because a God brought them down. Rather, we're saying them maybe because of reason, maybe because of things we can experience like pleasure and happiness, maybe because of things like virtue. You can go on the list of things you can justify morals by that aren't God, but that's where they sit. They say that we have plenty of good reasons for justifying morality. They aren't just based in God. So, once again, tearing down the house to a certain degree of this theocracy of religion claiming that it has the only rights to what's good and evil, but saying, you know what, good and evil are things we want to keep, and things we believe we think statements about good and evil are true. Those are your atheistic moral cognitivists. Now, moving another step down the line, we have non-nihilistic moral non-cognitivists. So these are folks that say that, you know what, statements about good and bad, they're nonsense. They're people maybe expressing an emotion, maybe talking about societal rules and things like that, but we're not really saying what you think we're saying, that this is good or this is bad or you should do this. We're just saying, I want this, or society thinks we should do this. According to these folks, neither reason nor God can justify morals in that strong ethical sense. However, we may still end up following morals for a different range of reasons, because we are social creatures that like to fit into societies, and so we end up following the morals. Or we just like them, they make us happy, and we express those in things that sound like moral statements, but are actually just expressions of our own emotion. Emotivists fall into this category, is kind of what I'm pushing for a little bit there. So they're not still the things that the anti-nihilists are afraid of. The important difference between these folks and the atheistic moral cognitivists is that these folks are saying that there's no fact of the matter about morality, whereas the atheistic moral cognitivists are saying there's a fact of the matter about morality, it's just not based in God. If we go one step further down, we have the actual nihilists. These are people that are saying God is dead, so there are no more rules. We've given up on religion, so we don't have any morality. They agree with the anti-nihilists that when they say that without God, no morality can be justified. They just also think that there is no God, and so don't think morality can be justified. So they're on the far end of this. Now, the issue here is that the anti-nihilists claim that this spectrum is an illusion, that there's no atheistic moral cognitivists, no non-nihilistic moral non-cognitivists. If you give up on theism, you have to be a nihilist. That's the only option, which flies in the face of plenty of folks who claim to be atheistic moral cognitivists, non-nihilistic moral non-cognitivists, who actually do moral things despite not believing in God, and a range of other things that don't even need to be justified and are just insulting from the anti-nihilist camp. And this is partially a consequence of these kinds of positions coming from literature, where nihilists and anyone that's in the non-theistic camp is portrayed very negatively. See Dostoevsky for some examples. The second meaning of nihilism has to do with the meaning of life. This is the claim that if there is no God, life has no meaning. This loss of meaning will lead to despair, emptiness, callousness, or selfishness. While there may be some that feel this way, others find theism as far more begetting of callousness and selfishness. If you believe that those starving orphans will go to heaven when they die, you'll have no reason to help them other than pure selfishness or self-interest. If you think that accepting God right before you die is sufficient to getting into heaven, you have no reason to do good for most of your life. However, if you think that you only have one life to live, you may be inspired to do good works in that life, because you won't get a second chance. If you think that you're not just doing good because some book told you to, or because some big man in the sky is threatening to you, unless you have an intrinsic motivation to do it, as opposed to the extrinsic and purely selfish reason to do good that many theists have. Now, there is an important difference between nihilism and skepticism. An academic skeptic that claims to be confident that nothing can be known is well in line with the nihilist claim that we can't know anything about morality or about a meaning of life, or the claim that those things don't even exist. However, a Pyrrhonian skeptic, like myself, is not convinced that we can't know moral truths. We might be able to know true things about morality. We just haven't found any that are fully justified yet. We might be able to have moral truth, we might not. I just haven't found any good arguments either way. So the Pyrrhonian skeptic doesn't really fall in line on anywhere on that spectrum. But the academic skeptic is more in line with the non-cognitivists and the nihilists that are deeply concerned that we can know anything about good and evil. What do you think? Does morality require God? Does a meaning of life? Is morality real or just an illusion? Does life have a meaning? Or is life, to quote Shakespeare, a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing? Whew! Well, that's a happy ending. I suppose it's a video on nihilism, so it's not going to be very happy. But watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.